Welcome, everyone. Bienvenue tout le monde. My name is Paul Bennett. I'm a federal retiree, a member of the National Association of Federal Retirees, and an Ottawa branch volunteer. I will be your host for today for this national webinar on getting ready to work again. We are proud to be able to offer you a simultaneous interpretation services today, and I want to take a moment to explain how it will work. Pour faire passer le canal audio de l'anglais au français et inversement, emmenez votre curseur de souris n'importe où sur la fenêtre de Zoom et une barre d'outils apparaîtra au bas de l'écran. L'un des outils ressemble à un globe terrestre et s'intitule Interprétation. En cliquant sur cette icône, vous pouvez passer d'une langue à l'autre grâce à l'interprète qui travaille en coulisses. To switch your audio sound between English and French, move your mouse anywhere on the Zoom screen and a toolbar will appear at the bottom. Click on the icon that looks like a globe and is labeled Interpretation, and you will be able to switch between English and French. We thank Nick Irvin, our interpreter from Irvin Interpretation, who we know will be providing an excellent service today. Merci d'avance, Nick. The slides you will see are in English, but we will send you a link to both the English and French versions of the slides after the webinar. Les diapositives que vous verrez sont en anglais, mais nous vous enverrons un lien vers les versions anglaises et françaises des diapositives après le webinar. Now I would like to formally begin our event by recognizing the First Nations on whose traditional lands our association offices are located. Here in Ottawa, this is unceded traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and has always held great historic, social, and spiritual significance for the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Last fall and this winter, we have been holding webinars on the subject of finding meaningful and fulfilling work in retirement. You have responded across the country with strong interest and great numbers. Over 920 association members and guests participated in our February webinars on the work opportunities available at Elections Canada during the next federal election. So that is why we are delighted to be back with you today with a special webinar tailored specifically to federal retirees who are thinking of returning to work. And we also have a very special speaker, Tamara Guttman of TLG Consulting and Communications. Tamara was one of our keynote speakers at our Thrive in Retirement event last fall. She is a federal retiree after a distinguished career at Global Affairs Canada, where she served as Canada's ambassador to Hungary, Slovenia, and Bosnia-Herzegovina, and as the department's Inspector General. Since retiring in 2022, Tamara has enjoyed having the flexibility to pursue her passions. These include creating her own consultancy to share her experience and expertise on leadership development, organizational ethics, and effectiveness. She is an accomplished training guide and facilitator, and she developed the material for this webinar specifically for federal retirees. And we are proud to say she is a member too. But before I turn things over to Tamara, I want to explain how we will handle questions. There will be a dedicated session for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, but you are welcome at any time to type questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you do not see the Q&A box, just move your mouse around the bottom of your screen until the Q&A box appears. We have a picture of the Q&A box on the screen right now. As you can see, the chat function is not working, so please type your questions in the Q&A box. Over 750 people have registered for this webinar, so we might receive a lot of questions. You can help us manage our time by voting for the questions that are most important to you. You will be able to see all the questions that have been asked in the Q&A box. Please use the thumbs up feature to vote. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. We are recording this webinar. We'll send you a follow-up email afterwards with links so you can access both the video recording and the presentation slides in both official languages. Now, You've patiently waited long enough. Let me introduce you to our speaker, Tamara Guttman. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul. Hi, everyone. Bonjour. My name is Tamara, and I'm so happy to be with you today. So, like all of you, as Paul said, I am a retired public servant, and I started doing part-time and contract work a few months after I retired. And I felt, very lucky to have those opportunities. But I also discovered very quickly that there was not a lot of information available about what it means to work as a federal retiree. There was no guide that I could find to walk me through how to do all of this, whether it was about the meaning of different types of work or how to manage my tax and my pension implications, all of that. And so I began to do my own research and I talked to a lot of experts, and that has led us here to this webinar. Now, the fact is that many of us are going to choose to do some form of work in retirement. And you can see clear statistical trends. Our population is aging, we are living, and we are working longer. Labor force participation by people of retirement age is steadily increasing. And whether you want to work a little or a lot, there is information that we all should know. So even if, your occasional or part-time work is with your old federal department or agency, and it feels very familiar and easy to you, it is important to remember that it's different now because we are pensioners and we are outside of those organizations. It's also different psychologically for us because we're working for ourselves. We're not public servants anymore. And it is different practically. And the reality is that we are on our own to manage our work and the administration of our working lives. And so as retirees, we need to be equipped to do this. And that is our focus today. So let's get started. We have two goals in this webinar series on the theme of getting ready to work again. And the first is really simply that to ensure that federal retirees can be ready to seek and to take on paid work when you want it. And we also want to make sure that you are well informed about your options and the main considerations to keep in mind as you get started. And so today is part one of a two-part series. Now, I should flag at the outset that our general focus is on taking on occasional or part-time paid work. This is not about returning full-time to the workforce, so we're not talking about canceling your retirement, but some of the lessons will help in either case. And today we're going to look at the front end of this big topic because there is a lot to cover, and that's why we're doing it in two parts. We're going to start with some self-reflection, and then we're going to dive into the essentials of presenting your skills and, of course, looking for work. And then we're going to talk about some practical tips and considerations, including the all-important tax and pension part of that. In part two, in September, we're going to get more into actual types of work doing, casuals in terms with government, but also about creating your own business so that you can negotiate contracts and how to value yourself, all of that. So it's going to be really fun in the fall. So let's start with our self-reflection. Retirement is already such a big life change, right? Most of us have worked for years and decades to get to this point where we don't have to work anymore. And so adding work back into your retired life is also a big thing. And it is important to reflect on what this means as you start. And so the first lesson, of course, of a good self-reflection exercise is don't start in a negative headspace. Don't be the cranky queen glowering at the world, feeling unhappy with herself. So let's get into a more positive space. There we go. And it's important because what we're doing is reflecting on what each of us actually wants for ourselves and on recognizing the talent and the value that we offer. And it's also something that may take a little boost in confidence and some courage to get used to promoting ourselves with others. So try to shake off those negative thoughts. So for self-reflection, the first and obviously most central question is, why do you want to work? We'll talk about that in a second. There's lots of reasons. Also consider how much or how often you want to work. And of course, look at this in the context of your broader life and retirement goals. How does work fit in with that? Can you balance this with the other important things that you want for yourself or for your family in this phase of your life? And I like to use the approach of thinking about green lines and red lines. So we all know what red lines are. Those are the cautions and constraints, the lines we don't want to cross. I have one red line, which is that I will not work full time ever again if I can help it. And so I always set that out as my red line. But the green lines are where the good stuff is, because that is the space where you are setting out what you want, whether it's a goal or an experience, whatever it is. So what your goals can be from working in retirement, I mean, it can be anything, right? And it's so personal. So it can be, about having more intellectual stimulation or new experiences. You could be looking to add some structure to your day or to fill out your calendar a bit more. Making some extra money is something I think we all would see as a useful thing, particularly these days. Or, maybe the driver for you is having more social interaction or creating new networks. It really can be anything. And so we have a little exercise. You can do this as I continue speaking or do it after, whatever works for you. But do take a moment and reflect on what is your goal if you choose to work in retirement, and be honest with yourself, because it will help to guide you to what the right sorts of opportunities are going to be. And try writing that short list of green lines and red lines. It can be really, really fun to do. So we're going to move to our first big chapter, which is the essentials for getting back to work again. And that is namely how to present your skills and experience. And then we'll talk about actually looking for work. So first up, here is poor old Pam from The Office. We all know her, with her very sad little resume of 2 lines. It's very tragic. But this is not going to be us, because as retired public servants, we offer a lot. You offer a lot. We all do. And however long you worked in the public service or the private sector, whatever your combination of experiences, at this point in your life, you have vast experience as well as personal qualities like reliability and trust that are valued by employers. So the first thing we're going to talk about is creating a curriculum vitae, a CV. Now, I know most of you out there are saying, I know what a CV is, Tamara. Most of us have them or have had them in the past, but it might be time to do an update. For me, when I started my post-retirement work life, after that little bit of a break of a few months, I realized that I had never actually had a real CV. My first one I ever did was when I was joining the Foreign Service, and it covered my university time and I think some high school awards, and that was it. And, the CV I was using was just a list of all my jobs and positions, and it was much more guided to competitions within government. It was not something that I could use for new employers, and I did have to start fresh. The most important function of your CV, of course, is to indicate your experience. But the real trick that we want you to keep in mind is that it's about translating your past work history into showing what you can do now. And so do focus on the skills and expertise that you hold, not just the job titles. Also, we want you to get used to the idea of having your own pitch. I call it the 2-minute pitch, but it's that short statement that encapsulates who you are and what you offer. And you're going to use this over and over again. So let's look at a few tips in preparing your CV and presenting your skills. Choose a CV format. So, when you Google CV template, curriculum vitae template, you're going to see thousands of options for you that you can easily download and use. There's so many choices. It doesn't matter what you choose. Just make sure that it is clear and easy to follow. So if you like a CV with, purple, or if you're like me and you have one with a few polka dots, that's fine. Just make sure it's very easy to follow. A lot of these new templates will give you a space now to do that summary statement. I call it the pitch, you can call it the summary, but it'll give you a little space to show quickly who you are and what you offer. And you're going to use this in the CV, but also in the emails that you're going to send out to contacts. You're going to draw on this in your conversation. So it's really great to be able to develop that. And if you see our gentleman on the slide who is doing his, saying, I bring 25 years of experience in controllership and financial management, and I can offer strategic advice and etc. Very easy to follow what he is offering. Now, in the CV, of course, you're going to highlight your most relevant experience and skills. That does not mean a laundry list of everything you've ever done, but really select the experiences that are most relevant to what you want to be doing now. And do include references to any formal training, professional credentials, certifications, of course, that go along with the things you want to do now. Include a reference to your security clearance, and we're going to come back to the issue of your security clearance later. You can add a very brief, like 1 or 2 line or 2 bullet description of what you did in those roles, but we'll suggest use active language. So instead of saying, I was part of the financial sector team in X, you can say, I led the reform of financial legislation, or I coordinated high-level events for the minister. I managed a team of, this many specialists. That active language that actually says what you did. Also try to use simple vocabulary and avoid jargon and government speak. As retirees, I think a lot of the time we're trying to deprogram our brains from all those years in government and all of the bureaucraties and coded language that we used. This is a really good place to just try and keep it simple. Now, a very important tip for developing your CV is that you're going to probably have different versions of your CV because you're going to be reaching out to different possible employers, to different audiences. It's really useful to keep just a short core version. Maybe it's 1 page that focuses on the most important experience and skills that you want to demonstrate. You can have a separate page, an annex, a separate document where you can list all of your experiences, all of your job titles, all of the crunchy details that go with those, your references. Keep that separate. You can attach it, you can pull it out, extract from it when you need it, but this way you don't have to constantly reinvent that nice, crisp core CV that you're going to have. Because the point of all of this is you want to make it easy for different employers to understand what you offer. So let's take a quick moment and talk about your skills. Sometimes, as part of that self-reflection that you're doing, it can take a little while to recognize all the different capabilities that we offer. And one approach that's useful is to think in terms of both general and specialized skills. The specialized skills are going to be more obvious because those are the things we actually know about and we did. So if you were an auditor, you've got those skills, or a finance expert. If you came from a certain policy community or, specialized in security management, those sorts of skills are more obvious and you definitely want to signal those on your CV. It could even be things like if you spent a lot of time doing Treasury Board submissions, and if that's the sort of work you want to do part-time in retirement, then highlight that. But don't undersell the general skills. These are highly valuable to employers who want to know that their new casual or short-term employee knows how to handle themselves in an office or working with a team, or that they can jump into a special project or work with clients. So don't neglect those, whether it's, about having effective communication skills or project management experience, whatever it is. Now, we're going to look quickly at 2 examples of CVs. I recognize that on your screens, you're not going to be able to see all the tiny detail, and that's okay. But just to give you a sense of, you see one CV here, Jane Blogs, that it's very easy on the eye. It's simple, it's not overcrowded, there's nice headings. And the point again is that you can find what you're looking for. This person has taken the time to highlight their skills, both personal and professional skills, or general and specialized, and an employer can find what they're looking for. On the other side, you see a different model of a CV, and I pulled both of these from the internet, um, which is clearly harder to follow. It's more packed. It's a kind of a funky format. It's harder to find what you're looking for. So you can see the examples of maybe what works better than other things. Okay, those are CVs. We're going to move on to part 2 of our essentials, which is finding work. So we don't want you just sitting and waiting for the telephone to ring, although this is very adorable, so you can do that for a little while. But sometimes the phone will ring, but generally I've found that you need to put in a bit of effort to get the word out about yourself before that's going to happen. So I can say that, first of all, everyone's experience is going to be different depending on where you live and what you do and what you're interested in doing, that the work that's available is going to vary widely, of course. But I can say that for myself, I'm into my 3rd year of retirement. I have actually been amazed at how much work is available if you want it and you go after it and you are flexible. And it does start with getting the word out about you. You need to use your networks, you know, even if they're a bit rusty, this is really important. And I recognize it can be intimidating. It's the idea of sitting there at home in front of your laptop and going, I'm going to start writing to people so that I can get hired. But you can keep it low key. And one of the most easy ways is to, send an email to the HR office in your old department or agencies. Use that short summary, that pitch we talked about that's now in your CV, that quick statement of who you are and what you offer. You can use that and adapt that in a straightforward email. Say, hey, I'm interested in looking for work. Here's who I am. Here's what I offer. If you know of anything, I would love to chat. Full stop. Very straightforward. And you can expand from there. You can reach out to other former colleagues or other people, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Another really good place to focus on is LinkedIn. If you're someone who uses that, employers really do use LinkedIn to identify people to hire. I have been told this over and over again, largely because I am terrible with LinkedIn and I don't update it enough, but it can be very valuable. So don't neglect that. And about, jobs.ca, gc.ca website and other places. I want to take a second and talk about personnel agencies and consulting firms. Now, we're going to get into this more in the autumn, the September webinar, but both of these can be really fantastic places to look for short-term or part-time work. You can reach out to personnel or placement agencies at any time. They are everywhere. I'm sitting in the National Capital Region. I know there's a whole bunch here, and they have different areas of focus and specializations. They're going to be where you are, or, virtually. It doesn't even have to be in the city that you're living in. But you can reach out to them, send an email, tell them about your background, and set up a call and find out about the sort of contracts that they do and whether that fits the sort of skills you have. Consulting firms are a little different because they have more of their own corporate focus of what they're trying to deliver, but they are also often looking for talented individuals who can help them deliver on the contracts they have with the government or the private sector. And last on this page, don't forget your own professional networks. So if you come from the HR community, finance community, if you were a policy specialist, you have networks out there. Sometimes they're kind of formal things. Sometimes they're just people that you know. You can reach out to these people and say, hey, I'm interested in looking for some work opportunities. Do you know where I can go? You need to be a little bit creative, but don't neglect these. And I'll give you a really great example of this that I just learned about this winter. Did you know that there is a specific web portal for human resources specialists? The Human Resources Council, which sits under Treasury Board, actually keeps an inventory of retired HR specialists that allows government departments and agencies to hire people, maybe people like you, for short-term work. And this is where if they have a gap to fill, if they're looking for a specific type of expertise for short term, or they have a particular project, they can draw on this inventory and offer work. You can register on the website anytime. You'll have this slide. It is so easy to do. And all of these examples that I've just given you of ways to reach out to get the word out about you, they do not cost you a thing other than your time and maybe just a little courage to get used to doing that. So I'm going to give you a few of my tips here. We started the webinar by talking about knowing what you want for yourself, right? And the things you're going to enjoy doing. But I will say, be flexible. Opportunities could come in different shapes and sizes, and you don't always know what you're going to enjoy doing the most. It doesn't have to align to your old specialization or what classification and level you used to have. I've done HR contracts with my old department to help with various promotion exercises. And I gotta say, they were really fun to do, especially in reconnecting with former colleagues, but also just knowing that I was able to support the new generation of leadership in that department. It had nothing to do with what my work was previously, but I really enjoyed doing it and I was glad to do it. Second tip is build relationships with the organizations and people that you find interesting. You might send out 3 dozen emails saying, hey, I'm out here, here's my pitch, here's what I want to do. Or you may make a bunch of calls that don't necessarily lead to jobs right away, but these do have value and can pay off later. And that goes to the third point, which is when you're having these conversations, try not to treat them as just transactional. Do you have work? Yes or no. These are investments. Give yourself a chance to learn about what those organizations or those people are doing. And very importantly, give them a chance to form an impression of you. You want to be someone that they want to work with, that they are comfortable with, that they feel confident, can fit in with their organization. So do make that investment. For myself, I can say, oh, sorry, last point, which is consider what your time and talents are worth. Because of course we are talking about paid work in this webinar. So it can be what you're worth, but it also is about what's valuable to you. Yes, money is good, but do consider also what will make for a good experience for yourself, which could mean, different levels of pay, but also just the enjoyment of what you're doing or the value of gaining new experience or building a relationship. I can share that for my part. I have taken on a whole mix of commitments in retirement. Some of those are really in that professional zone of what I want to do, and they have, compensation that goes with that, which is very nice. But I've also done projects for less pay that are near and dear to my heart. And I have even done a few no pay um, commitments, but that are great professional experiences and are going to be good resume builders. So you can think about those trade-offs, and we're going to talk more about setting your value in the fall. And the last point is just get into the right mindset when speaking with employers. So of course, we want you to be proactive. Don't, sit and wait for things to come to you necessarily. Be confident in yourself and what you offer and relaxed in your demeanor. Avoid being passive, obviously not being arrogant, and practice patience, especially when dealing with government, because we know sometimes things may not always go as quickly as we like. Now, so that's all of my advice. But now we're actually going to hear from an expert in our Let's Talk with an Employer segment. And so I hope you can see on the screen, I am so pleased to welcome Colin Gascon, who is the Director General of Human Resources in the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer of Canada. Welcome, Colin. Bienvenue.
Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Hi, everyone.
Great. So we'll just jump right in, Colin, because I know you're only with us for a few minutes. Elections Canada is, of course, known as an agency that does a lot of short-term hiring to support its mandate in delivering Canada's elections. And for you, as an experienced HR leader, can you talk to us a bit about why would a federal retiree be someone that you are interested in hiring?
Well, thank you very much, Tamara. And as you've mentioned, we have lots of experience in hiring retirees at the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer. And there's five main reasons why we turn towards these resources. The first one is often we find that retirees bring extensive experience and specialized skills that they've acquired, throughout their careers in the public service. And that deep knowledge and professional practices and standard can be a very valuable asset, especially if we're in a fast-paced environment where we don't necessarily have time to onboard and train. These people, they're coming with already a lot of experience and knowledge of our environment, and we find that very, very useful. The second reason I would say it often brings a little bit of stability. So a little bit less in the current context, but when the public service was hiring and growing, there was a lot of turnovers amongst our employees, and we found that often retirees, what they're looking is for a nice, stable environment where it's pleasant to work. And if you can offer that to them, they'll be more than happy to stay and work with you, which brings a lot of stability in an environment where rotation and attrition can be quite high. Also, when we hire, we have a lot of new employees or less experienced employees, and often, we have projects in a small department like ours that often goes beyond the skills maybe that the employees that you have, and when you get a retiree who comes with a lot of experience and specialized skills, well, they can mentor and train our less experienced employees, in going through the hoops of those big projects, and we find that skill transfer, that mentorship that they can bring, very, very useful for the organization as a whole. They're often very flexible as well. They don't necessarily have a schedules. You're no longer working, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So this often can bring us a little bit more flexibilities in responding to, urgent requests or timelines and so on and so forth, which we find is useful. And lastly, I would say that because of their extensive experience, because they're retiring from the public service, they've often acquired what we call soft skills, behavioral skills, adaptability, interpersonal skills, conflict management. They've seen it, they've done it, they know how to react. And that also is very, very useful when there's a little bit of stress in the environment or things are going fast paced. They bring a lot of calm and experience to it, which, for a senior executive is really nice to have, within a team. So I would say those are the key elements that would make us turn towards a retiree instead of other options.
Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you for that. I think that's fantastic, and it goes a little to what we were just talking about in the earlier segment about not underestimating those general skills or soft skills, that ability to immerse into an office, into a work culture, and to get going, to work with others, versus just the kind of specialized expertise. So I think that's incredibly helpful. I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us today. We're going to keep moving through, but if you have any last words, please, you're welcome to go for it.
No, it's all good. And like I said, at the end of the day, it enriches our work environment. It brings valuable diversity in terms of skills and experience, and really don't hesitate if you're looking for that second career to make yourself available and known to the various network that Tamara, I think, you've provided to them. So thank you very much. I wish all of you a very nice day.
Oh, thank you so much, Colin. And we do want to remind everyone that you can go on to the Federal Retirees Ottawa Branch website and you can review the video replay of the special webinar that was given by Elections Canada on February 6th to talk about different types of employment opportunities around the federal elections. You will be amazed at the number of opportunities available. I know that I was. So once again, thank you. Merci beaucoup, Colin. So let's do another quick exercise before we move on to the final chapter. Again, you can do this later. You can do this while I talk, but try just setting out 2 pieces of paper or 2 lists. And on one, without overthinking this, just jot down what are the top 5 skills that you have acquired and are proud of and would like to keep doing. On the other list, try writing down, again, without overthinking, at least 5 people or organizations that you know you can contact to signal your interest to work. You might be surprised at how easy it is to start filling up those lists. So, okay, we have covered the essentials of getting organized to work as a retiree and presenting skills and all of that. Now, we're going to talk about some of the important considerations and practical tips that you should know. So first up, let's talk about workspace. Now, I know not all of the work you might be contemplating doing where you are is virtual. You may be going to another location, but a lot of casual or part-time roles, at least with government, will have you working from home. And, you know, I think a lot of us got really good at working from home during the pandemic. I used to be terrible at it. I had no discipline. I was not organized, but I think a lot of us learned to do it better. And so it is easier now. I will say that it does make a difference to have somewhere comfortable and somewhere where you can focus, as well as having reliable Wi-Fi. You're going to need all the usual tools. I'm not going to waste your time telling you about laptops and things, you know that. But I will say that for my money, probably the most important investment you can make if you're planning on working from home a lot is a good chair that's not going to hurt your back. Those hard dining room tables may not do it after a while. And also do remember to stand up and move around and shake it out from time to time. You're going to need to make sure you've got all the right work applications and tools. So whether, you know, you use the Microsoft Office suite or some alternative, if you use Zoom for communication or Microsoft Teams or other things. I just recently paid for a subscription to Dropbox because I have a client who prefers to communicate that way. So keep track of all the sorts of applications and tools and subscriptions that you need, and track your expenses that you're paying for these for work, because you're going to use those at tax time. Okay. Now, let's talk about security clearance. I did mention this earlier, that you're going to want to put on your CV what your clearance is. And of course, this is often relevant for work with the federal government. Once you are retired, you cannot activate your own clearance. And I say activate because what happens when you retire, you know, a lot of us in government had clearances at different levels, is your clearance is deactivated. It's not canceled, it's deactivated. So it's like it goes to sleep. And then when you are being hired for work, the hiring organization will request to activate your clearance. So you are not involved in doing that, but it can be very useful to know what your clearance status is, even if it's deactivated, just knowing that it's still valid so that you don't have any nasty surprises when you are trying to get hired. You want to know that everything is lined up and ready to be activated. So you can do that by contacting the security office in your old department or agency. I've been very lucky and I'm very appreciative of the people at Global Affairs in our security team there who have helped me when I needed to ask them questions. You can also go to the Canadian Corps of Commissioners office and ask for information there. I'll give you one other note on this topic of security, which is not about your own clearance, but just a reminder that our obligations to protect classified information do not expire when we retire. So whether it's information you were working with, you know, previously years ago when you were employed full time, or information that you are working with maybe as a term or a casual, just please remember that those obligations don't end just because the work ends. So always be sure that you understand that. And that will come into play for things like what you can say on your CV or, when you're doing job interviews. Okay, I have saved probably the most important for almost last, which is pension implications. All of us want to protect our pension status. And the good news is you absolutely can work and protect your pension, but you do need to follow the rules if you are working for the federal government directly. There is no pension impact if you are working with the private sector, of course, but also if you are working through contracting with the federal government. So if you are working as your own business and doing a contract, you are not directly employed in that scenario and you don't have to worry about the pension. But if you are working for the government, so you're on a term or a casual and you have a letter of offer, you need to know the 6-month rule. And the 6-month rule, I hope everyone out there knows, is if you are working full-time or part-time, which means 12 hours or more per week, as a term or a casual, you can work up to 6 months minus a day with no pension impact. And the 6 months is measured by calendar date from when that term or casual begins. So I call this the Cinderella rule because it's all good, but if the clock strikes midnight, or in this case, 6 months, you may become a net contributor to the pension plan. And if you're a contributor, you're not a recipient, and your pension payments may stop. However, there is a magic wand, and it's very simple, which is just that you need to make sure that you stop your employment before 6 months. Ideally, it's minus a day, but ideally a week at most before 6 months. So you terminate your term arrangement, you terminate your casual before then, and you take a 1-week break. And then the clock resets to 0 on the 6-month rule. Also, and this is important for a lot of us because this applies to a lot of casual work that we're going to do, the 6-month rule does not actually apply if you are on a casual work arrangement that is designated work as required. And it would be written that way in your letter of offer that you are to work, quote, as required. You cannot actually accumulate pensionable time that way. You're still going to receive the standard letter from the pension center saying, hi, we've noticed that you are been employed by the government. Please be aware of, not jeopardizing your pension. I am paraphrasing, but there is that standard form letter you get. But again, if you're working casual as required, you're not going to be in trouble. But no matter what sort of arrangement you have or how comfortable it is, always contact the pension center and consult with them before you sign on new work. They welcome this, they encourage this, and I certainly will second that. Okay. Moving on from pension to tax. So as important as protecting your pension is keeping on top of the tax implications for your work income. Now, I'm going to give a big disclaimer here. I am not a financial expert, and I'm not offering financial advice. That would be a very bad idea. But I will say that from my own experience, it is really important to understand the tax side of your work arrangement. So if you're working for the government directly, of course, you're going to have tax deducted from your pay, just as if you're working in the private sector directly, you're going to have tax deducted. For the government, you're going to be asked to fill out taxation forms when you start your term or your casual. Always check the percentage of tax deducted. Do not assume the deductions are going to be as high as when you were a full-time or permanent worker, and that's because this is not your primary income anymore. For most of us, that's our pension, that's our primary income. And when you do get paid, you can check your deductions by calling the pay center, who are amazingly helpful, or you can use the external My GC Pay website. It's now been made much easier to access, but find out what your deductions are so that you can either set money aside if you need to or make an adjustment. If you are receiving business income through contract work, so again, not working directly for the government, But if you're working as a business, you have to manage your own income tax requirements. So that means setting aside funds for your income tax. Contract work as a small or a sole proprietor business may also require you to charge and remit GST or HST, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in September. So I just put that flag out here. But no matter what, if you are getting income from work on top of your pension from any source, it can be really worthwhile to get expert advice. Don't get caught out, which I was in my first year. I was not smart. I did not get advice, and I made big assumptions about what sort of tax would be deducted from my casual work pay. And I will just say it was not fun when all of that was reconciled at tax time. So get advice, from the Pension Center, the Pay Center are both amazing. Canada Revenue Agency has a number of helplines that are very good, or from your own accountant or your advisor. So I'm going to do a quick final word on values and ethics. So a lot of us, in fact, all of us, when we leave the public service and retire, we will have post-employment obligations. You have a little conversation with your values and ethics person, and they will talk to you about avoiding conflict of interest. And usually that applies for 1 year after departure. It can vary if you were in a special or very high level position, but that's the norm. So first, it's good to keep in mind if you are recently retired to be conscious of those conflict of interest risks. But it's also a good reminder for all of us, even those who are long past 1 year of retirement, that even when those obligations expire, we should conduct ourselves with integrity when doing work for the government or for any employer. This is our personal reputation. It's our own ethics. It also includes to be careful as we're doing all of that great network and fishing for work opportunities that I just told you to go out and do, to just be careful to not put any of our contacts who are active public servants into a conflict of interest situation. So such as by pressing them for special treatment or for information about jobs that you really shouldn't normally have access to. And with that, I get to just a few final thoughts from me to summarize. Always remember that what you offer is valuable to employers. You just have to let them know about yourself. And getting the word out does take a little courage. It takes some elbow grease, but use your network. And it is your network. You have spent your career building that network. It's yours to use. Don't feel shy about reaching out to people. Also, do explore those different job search channels and don't get discouraged if they all don't pan out. There's still good value in doing that. Be confident in what you're doing. Do that self-reflection. Know that you bring enormous value. But even if you don't always feel that confidence, you can at least try to show it, even if you're not always feeling it. And try to be flexible and open, because really opportunities are going to come in all different shapes and sizes. Doing this webinar with you is one such opportunity that I never imagined I would be doing, and I am so happy to be doing this. Take the time to consider those green lines of what you want, as well as your red lines of what you don't, and of course, keep on top of pension and tax implications. And whatever path you're going to choose in your retirement, if it's working a little or working a lot, or even not at all, especially if this webinar has put you into that corner, just remember that this is your time and you are in charge of what you will do or what you won't do, and you should be enjoying this time. So with that, I will do a quick little plug to remember to look for us in September with part 2 of this webinar series, where we're going to get into those really big, crunchier topics about working in retirement, about different types of work with government, about doing contracting and subcontracting, creating your own business, working with agencies, consultancies, all of that good stuff. And please do feel free to write in with your own requests of what subjects to cover. We'd like to know what's on your mind about taking on part-time or occasional work in retirement. And with that, I say thank you, and I turn it back over to you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Tamara, for your excellent presentation. We had lots of questions come in, and we're going to move right to the question and answer box. But as I mentioned before, you still have lots of time to vote for your favorite question using the thumbs up feature. We'll try to focus on the questions that have the most votes. And just another fact that we've had close to 40 questions. Tamara has kindly agreed to extend the presentation by a few minutes, so we'll try and accommodate as many as possible. Now, the first two questions that we had were actually ones that have been answered in your last few slides. They related to pensions and security clearances. So we'll move on to the third one that has the most votes. I know a few public retirees who are available to work as casual, either full-time or part-time. I think the question is, why is there no central directory available on jobs.emploi.gc.ca where jobs would be posted for public service retirees instead of being mixed up with all the jobs open to the public?
I think that's a brilliant question, and I don't know the answer to that. It is true. It is work because you have to go and slog. You have to reach out to your contacts. I am not aware of a directory that does that, but I will give a little plug for those of you who are on Facebook. There are still some of us using Facebook. There is a fantastic group on there for federal retirees. So if you look up Federal Government of Canada retirees, you'll see a group that you can join, and it's full of useful information. But it also is a place where I have seen people post job opportunities from time to time, so you can check that out. But why there's not a central directory, I wish I knew. It's a great suggestion.
Maybe that's something that the individual who's posting the question could investigate directly with the government. Now, we're all retired, more or less. Any tips on how to deal with ageism when looking for work and during interviews?
Oh, that is such a good question. Um, it's interesting because my experience has been one where when people are reaching out to me, it is specifically because I bring that level of experience. And I'll go back to what Colin Gascon just said, that there is a reason that federal retirees are so appealing to hire, because we've got that experience that tends to bring perspective, um, a calm in how we handle things, and of course, all of that knowledge and expertise. So I have not experienced that, but I am also focused on work largely with the Government of Canada, where there is an understanding of what someone, like me, who has 3+ decades of experience, can bring, versus being out in the private sector or in another place where you don't have that background. So it can be tricky, no doubt, but I would really lean on that element of the advantage of what you bring versus worrying about the disadvantage of ageism.
Okay, that's very helpful. Now, we've heard a lot in the last few years about remote work. The folks that are on the webinar today may have got quite used to being at home, and would they have a good chance of being able to do remote work were they to go back into the government or in the private sector?
Yeah, great question. So I I don't want to pretend that I know the thinking across all of the government of Canada, or what, Treasury Board's thoughts on this are. I think, like all of you, I can observe that the trend is very clear that remote work, or work from home, is not going away. It's very popular. Particularly if we're talking about if you're working part-time or casual, um, the cost of bringing someone into an office, setting them up in a workspace, getting all of that around them, using that space. A lot of government departments and agencies, they're not going to be doing that if you're working part-time or casual. It just doesn't make sense anymore. And I think that trend has been going on for a while. So certainly my experience has been very much in the space of working from home. Sometimes I do go into offices to do meetings. I've been lucky that in the sort of work I do, I have done a little bit of work travel as well. But generally speaking, my home is my office, and I think you're going to find that the same. There's going to be exceptions, of course, if your specialization is in a high security area, in an area that's highly sensitive, or an area that's very operational. And I don't mean like by phone operational, but physically operational. Of course, that is different. But I certainly see the trend as very much staying with remote and work from home.
Okay, thank you. One question that has been submitted is, are cover letters beneficial in addition to the resume? You focused on the resume, but not so much on cover letters.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I will admit, I didn't even think about cover letters when I was putting this together. And, I would, when we get into the September webinar, I'm going to be talking more with personnel agencies and consultancies, and I'm going to ask their take on that. My sense of it is that, we're in such a virtual world. And so the email that you send, because we're mostly doing this by email, is effectively your cover letter. Um, a lot of employers don't really want to take the time to go through some, two-page verbiage. They want to look at what you offer quickly, and does it meet? And that is again why I tend to focus much more on that idea of your pitch instead of a cover letter, that tight encapsulation of, hi, I'm Tamara. I have, 32 years of experience as a public service executive, and what I focus on is this, and here's what I can do for you, versus the old style cover letters that we all used to do. But I won't speak for every employer. They may be different, but I would focus more on that than on the old style of cover letter.
Okay, thank you. Now, we've just had an election and provincially, and we're about to have one federally. And we've had a leadership campaign, and we've been talking about government cutbacks. Do you have a crystal ball as to whether there'll be more or less jobs available in the next year or so?
I wish if I did, I would use it for myself first. No, I definitely don't have that crystal ball. I'm just like all of you, and looking at what's happening at the different scenarios, and who knows. Um, I can only say from my own experience, which is not in any way representing the government of Canada, that when there are cutbacks, there are sometimes specialized needs that still need to be filled, or short-term gaps that need to be filled. Um, all that I would say is, if you start seeing those trends, don't be discouraged, because being discouraged and not getting your name out, not reaching out to people, then you are the one taking yourself out of those possibilities. There's nothing to be lost by still reaching out, saying, hi, I know you're in a time of budget cuts. I see a lot happening, but if you need help, short term or whatever, here's what I can do. So you can try to make use of that to amend your pitch a little bit when you're reaching out to an old HR office or whoever it is, to recognize that they are reducing, they're in a time of turmoil, but hey, you are someone they can call on to help. That's the advice I can give.
All right. Now, here's a rather unusual question.
Oh,
I
good.
haven't worked since 2012 and want to be involved in the workforce now because I'm now a widow. Is that something to mention? Because it might look strange that I haven't worked in such a long time.
Um, First of all, I'm so sorry that for your loss and what you went through. That's extremely difficult. Um, it's a great question, and I'm not sure how to answer it. Sharing a little personal detail about yourself might be something when you're having a conversation, when you're actually having a discussion, whether it's online or by phone, to give a bit of context. When you're doing the initial reach out, you might want to just make it more about, for personal reasons, I left the workforce in 2012. Now I'm back and I'm looking forward to opportunities, and save that. But it really depends on you and the context and who it is that you're communicating with. So that is a tricky one, but it might be something more for conversation.
All right. Now, getting back to resumes, there are two somewhat related questions. In the Jane Blogs example that you posted, she only listed 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And similarly, the resumes you posted seem to have only been 1 page. Are the general rules about how far back you should go in employment and how long your resume should be?
Yeah, another really, really good question. And these are exactly the questions that I was asking in my first year of retirement when I was talking to agencies and to others, and trying to fix my previously terrible resume. So the usual advice is focus on having a 1 page. I think you can make it probably 2 pages as a stretch, basic CV. And that's where you really should be focusing on just the core things that you want to highlight. So, I can give you, not that mine is perfect. My example here, this is mine, where I have not listed all of my jobs. I have focused it more on my work now as a consultant. I've listed my time as a public service executive and one other job. But I have that long list, that long annex that I keep that lists meticulously every job that I have had, both since retiring and, of course, prior to that, and lists what my title was, who I managed, budgets, anything that's relevant. I've got references there. And again, I would keep that list separate that you can draw on. But for the core CV, just focus on the main things. Um, it really depends on your career profile, but a laundry list isn't going to be necessary. And you can kind of group things out. So if you worked, say, at Fisheries and Oceans, for 20 years and you held a variety of roles, you don't need to have all of those on the core resume. You can say Fisheries and Ocean manager and specialist from 1982 to 2000 or whatever. So you can find ways to do that, but no matter what, don't overcrowd the core CV.
Okay, now sticking with resumes or CVs, someone has suggested that Chat GPT is your friend for CV creation. Would you share that? Would you agree?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm gonna get personal here and say that one of my very best friends absolutely loves Chat GPT and uses it all the time, and I never use it, largely because I don't know how. So yes, I mean the short answer is yes. You can use Chat GPT if you're not as comfortable writing for yourself and you know how to use that app. Absolutely, make use of it, but take a look at it. Also, get a friend or a spouse or someone else to look at it and just say, does this make sense? I think one of the things I have been told that's useful about ChatGPT is it can sometimes help you to translate from government speak into something that's more straightforward. So if you're comfortable, hey, give it a try, why not?
Now you were at an EX level. From what you've seen, are most jobs available for us going to be at the senior level or the PM1, PM2 level, ECs, PMs?
Oh, wow. What a good question. I don't know the answer to that. You know, because my experience is based on my experience, but I think that, it's more about focusing on, again, the specific skills and experience that you offer that fits a niche. And, we've all worked in government. We know that where does most of the work take place in government? As a former EX, I can tell you it's not always at the EX level. A lot of the work takes place at those other classifications and levels. So from where I sit, and just even thinking back to when I was a manager in government, you want people who have, whether it's PM or ECs or whatever, ISs, whatever it is. No, to me, that's no impediment whatsoever. But it is about being clear on the skills and the experience that you are offering and what you can do for them. So I would not see that as an issue, but again, I don't have that crystal ball that would be so useful to have. But um, I will add one other little note, which is that sometimes being a former EX and looking for EX level compensation is an impediment. I have experienced that directly, especially, previous question this time of government reductions and cuts. Having that former EX tag is not necessarily going to be an advantage. So it can work both ways.
Okay, thank you. If I return to work as a casual at a lower level than when I retired, is it possible to go back for another casual later on at my higher original level I was at when I retired?
Oh gosh. Okay. So what you get compensated as a casual has nothing to do with your previous level. When you retired, it stops. So whatever you're being offered, whether it's a term or a casual, the compensation is about that position that you occupy. So it doesn't matter. I've said I've done a whole mix of different types of contracts and work arrangements. So I retired as an EX3. I have done some contract work paid at what in the foreign service speak is called an FS level. So consider that equivalent to like a PM5 or something. It has no bearing. So one contract or work arrangement you do has no bearing on any others. It just doesn't matter. It is about what they are offering and about what you feel comfortable receiving. That's all.
Okay, thank you. We'll have time perhaps for one more question because we are running rather late. But I would say before that we've had a lot of people write in to say how much they've appreciated this, Tamara, and how much they look forward to the next session.
Good.
When you set up a business as a sole proprietorship, how do you decide if you should incorporate? What are considerations around liability insurance for sole proprietorship? This is a service consulting business.
Well, I'm not going to answer that only because that is what we're going to talk about in September. So we're not there yet. I have lots of notes and material on that. And so I don't feel like we can really go down that path today, but it is quite a different thing. Sole proprietor business is just, it's your starting point, right? It's just me, Tamara, as a consultant. I opened a file with CRA. I am now a sole proprietor business so that I can work and do contracts and, file my taxes that way, my GST and HST. Incorporation is going to get you into a whole bunch of other considerations. If you're doing the type of work where you need liability protection, that's a big motivator to incorporate. If you want to hire employees, if you have a more complex business, taxation is quite different. So if you're doing a lot of work, that can be a consideration. So there's a whole pile of things that we are going to get into in September on this, but it's a great question.
Well, we look forward to that. And we thank everyone for their participation today, particularly Tamara, Colin, and Nick for his simultaneous interpretation. We invite you to share your feedback on today's webinar. Please take 2 minutes to complete the online evaluation form you will be offered before you exit Zoom. If you're not yet a member of our association, we hope that you'll consider joining us. Membership has many perks, including these great webinars, various discounts, and access to Madoc travel insurance. And of course, our association's main mission is to advocate for the protection of our members' federal pensions and benefits. If you enjoyed this national webinar, we are confident you will enjoy the next one we have planned for September 24th with Tamara. More details will appear in our upcoming newsletters, and you'll be able to register for this session on our website, NAFROttawa.com as well. Even if you're not a member of the association, you are welcome to attend the webinar and try us out. Our hope is that you will find real value in what we offer federal retirees, that you will decide to join us too. A final reminder, we will be sending everyone a follow-up email with links to the recording of today's presentation and the presentation slides, and other resources from Tamara, and of course, our website address as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.